Hey, greetings all. I'm Colonel Clayton Stiles, commander of the 314th Troop Carrier Group, and Esther and I are thrilled to be here today. The last time I was here was in February of 1945 when our group departed here for forward basing in Poix, France to fly the Rhine crossing mission. But thrilled to be here today. That picture of me was taken at my desk in my office on the other side of the airfield at the headquarters building behind where the tower was. And if you look up in the right-hand corner, there is our group seal, distinctive unit insignia, we call them in the Army, Air Force. And Verbiente, it's men will come is what it stands for, the closest translation. Benentine, there's different if I said it right. But men will come was a promise to our allies and a threat to our enemies. So it was kind of a double-edged motto, if you think about it. And if you look at it, you can it's like see those boots walking across the clouds. Think of the American C-47s flying across the North Atlantic to come here. And we went to North Africa first. But Britain was alone in the war for over 2 years until we came in. But when we came in with force. Men will come. This is what RAF Saltby looked like from the air when we arrived here in February of 1944. It was built to British Class A airfield standards. You can see there's three runways. They were about 30 degrees apart. 60 degrees apart. One was 6,000 feet. The other two were about 4,200 feet long. And there's a perimeter track. You see that road that goes all the way around the airfield, the edge of the runways. And all those little loops and those were called hard stands. That's where we parked our aircraft. You know, they were dispersed all over the airfield. They weren't all parked together just in case the airfield was bombed. You didn't want to lose all your aircraft in one site. But that's what the Saltby looked like from the air when we arrived in March of 1944. We departed Sicily with 51 aircraft. That's what we originally came here from Saltby, to Saltby from Sicily. And if you look at that picture there, you see that that aircraft is named Turf and Sport Special. And the guy in the middle there on the right, that was Tech Sergeant Bing Woods from the 61st Troop Carrier Squadron. And Bing kept a diary the entire war, which was, I was blessed to have access to that diary. And I just want to tell you Bing's first impression when he landed here at RAF Saltby. Remember, this is after going through the deserts of North Africa, the invasion of Sicily, the invasion of Italy. And this is what Bing said in his diary entry when he arrived here. As soon as the aircraft pulled into the squadron area at RAF Saltby, our crew was surrounded by those that had already arrived and immediately received a briefing. It went like this: girls, food, girls, beer, girls, fish and chips, girls, scotch, girls and girls. I think you get the gist of what the men were thinking about it after living in tents in North Africa, a bombed out airfield in Sicily, and then coming here. This was the best living conditions the men saw the entire war so far after being overseas. They had Nissen huts. They had heated huts to sleep in with floors. You know, they had concrete runways instead of sand and dirt. So this was quite a, you know, they were thrilled to be here. And what's interesting is that aircraft, Turf and Sport Special, you can see it today. It's actually preserved in the Air Mobility Command Museum at Dover Air Force Base, Delaware. So that airplane that flew on D-Day, second serial lead actually, is still in existence. During World War II, the 314th Troop Carrier Group flew the C-47 Skytrain aircraft, which was based on the commercial Douglas DC-3. It was a fabulous aircraft. The pilots loved it. The paras loved it. Each C-47 could carry 14 to 18 equipped paratroops, about 2.5 to 3 tons of cargo or whatever supplies. It could drop bundles out the doors. Underneath, they could actually drop parapacks that were positioned under the aircraft like bomb shackles that could be released so they could drop supplies to troops, but also paras out the jump doors. What people also don't realize is what was fantastic about the C-47, it could be rigged into an aeromedical to a flying hospital. If you look at the picture on the right there, you can see the litter stanchions stacked up. The C-47 could carry up to 24 patients like that with a team of 3 medical assistants. Usually it was a female flight nurse with 2 male medical technical assistants. So that mission, which continues on today, was established actually in North Africa during World War II. And after the initial landings in France on D-Day, we scraped out emergency airfields, bulldozed airfields right behind the beaches. C-47s and gliders were flown in there and evacuated 26,000 wounded British, Canadian, and American casualties to England. So think about that workhorse, 26,000 casualties, lives saved. This is before we had hospitals in France, before field hospitals. So the C-47 was the workhorse. It was a hell of a plane that we flew. The C-47 could take off on a dirt strip less than 3,000 feet long. Wait till I give you these numbers. You're going to say, hey, that sounds like what the airplane I'm flying now. But it could fly. It was a rugged airplane with the extra fuel tanks bolted down in the back. It had a range of 1,500 miles. Okay, and it was rugged. On one engine, it could fly for 100 miles. And you're going to see a picture of an airplane pretty beat up that just did that on D-Day in a little bit here. We also flew gliders. In our Army Air Force, the glider pilots were assigned to the troop carrier squadrons. So the CG-4A Waco glider was the mainstay of our glider force. And as I mentioned, the glider pilots were assigned to the C-47 squadrons. They were part of our group. Unlike in the British doctrine, they were assigned to the airborne units, actually, the glider pilot unit. So different doctrine, slightly different mission, but the same. They all had guts. Imagine flying the glider, no engine, you get released, and heck of an airplane. The CG Waco, the CG-4A, our mainstay American glider, unlike the British Horsa, which was made out of wood, the Waco was much smaller. It just had a steel frame covered in nothing but fabric. The woods and the wings and tails were made out of wooden fabric also. So it was light. That glider, though, could carry 6,000 pounds. 6,000 pounds, think about it. Could carry more than it actually weighed. Okay? So that was equated to 13 equipped combat troops with 2 glider pilots in there, so a total of 15. That was what they call a 15-seat glider. And it could carry either a howitzer or a Jeep. Sadly, because one of the fallbacks of the Waco is too small to carry both the Jeep and the gun to make the gun mobile, so you needed 2 of them to land close in proximity to marry up with each other. So that was a drawback on the Waco. But some pictures of some glider pilots on the right there from the 32nd Troop Carrier Squadron. I can see their faces. I remember them all. Just looking at that picture, it brings back memories. A little short guy my height there is Don Fritz in the middle. And it was actually his grandson who gave me that picture. But when we were stationed in Sicily, the 32nd Troop Carrier Squadron, they built their squadron bar out of the wood, out of a wrecked glider, the seats in there. So that's the ingenuity of the American GI there. Hey, let's talk about the crews. When just like any commander, whenever I'm asked about D-Day, the 314th, or anything about my job, the first thing I mention is our 4 flying squadrons. The heartbeat of the group. They were consisted of the finest, trained air crews, crew chiefs, mechanics, ground crewmen, cooks, all kinds of combat service support. A C-47 squadron was a self-contained unit that could deploy and take care of itself. So it had all of combat service support. It had cooks to feed the men, prepare their meals for them when they were flying. So when they got down, there was hot coffee and chow after flying all night. So that was the neat thing about the squadron structure back then. Each one of these pictures is from our 4 flying squadrons. The 32nd, the 50th, the 61st, and the 62nd were our 4 flying squadrons in the group. If you look at the top picture there, see the man standing in the paratroop door? Looks like he's got a toothbrush in his mouth. That's Jack Downhill. I know Ray knows him. Several other people have met him in this room. You're going to see a picture of Jack later, so remember that name, Jack Downhill. He rose to be the commander of the 62nd Troop Carrier Squadron by the end of the war. Sadly, the lower right-hand corner, most of that crew was killed in action later on a mission during Market. Catch up here. So we talked about, I know Colonel Tucker mentioned the the battle record of 314th. They had flown all the combat missions in Sicily, Italy, before they redeployed to England here for D-Day. So we were not a rookie group when we arrived here at Saltby. We were combat tested. The men had probably 500, 800 hours flying of combat time. All the crews did in the C-47. Obviously, it's the 80th anniversary of D-Day. I've highlighted that. It's only makes sense to talk about Operation Neptune today, but which was a code name for the air portion of D-Day. Once the group arrived here in England, we were quickly set to task to fly night formation training, tight airdrop formation, wing 3 ship elements, 3 airplanes flying together with a lead aircraft and 1 on each wing. And you can kind of see the picture on the left there was taken from the pilot's seat looking at the lead aircraft. And what's interesting, that lead aircraft is actually Turf and Sport Special again, that aircraft from the 61st Troop Carrier Squadron. And by the way, that photo was taken on the way to Arnhem, actually. So that aircraft has British Pears on it in that photo. It's on the way to Arnhem. The little guy on the right there, that's David Earl Mott. I just want to tell you a little story about it and make it a little personal. He was the baby pilot in the 62nd Troop Carrier Squadron. He was also the keeper of the records. He was meticulous about taking notes about every day. He was an original member, so he deployed the whole war, survived the whole war. And just a quick story about young David Mott there. When we were deployed, we were in Sicily. Our wing commander was inspecting us one day, walking through the ranks. He came up in front of David, Earl Mott. He said, "Hey, son, does your mom know you're here?" Just like me. I mentioned our formation flying. That picture was actually taken right overhead of RAF Saltby. So you can kind of see the 3 ship elements, but when they're put together, they call it a V of V's. So that's a picture of our group. Actually, that is our group flying right over RAF Saltby on a training flight prior to D-Day. So between March and June, we've heavily compressed flying training, night formation, and airdrop training. This is a picture of my D-Day formation lead crew. If you can see, I'm in the center there. And this is the crew I flew with the entire war. It was a crew from the 62nd Troop Carrier Squadron. This is the crew I deployed with when we left the States. On our very first combat mission of the war during the invasion of Sicily, right after making the drop near the town of Gela on the south coast of Sicily, a German pillbox shot us down, actually. It took out both engines. This was after the Pears had dropped out, 82nd Airborne. We glided, ditched the aircraft in the sea. The plane floated for about 15 minutes. We got in life raft, were picked up by the Navy, got back to North Africa a week later, and the war continued. That's how it was. You didn't go home. You just made your way back to your unit, and you continued on. The guy on the left there, that was the crew chief, our crew chief, like my son. That's Leo J. Regard. Leo died 1 month short of his 105th birthday. I got to meet him. So here's the air tasking order for D-Day. You can kind of see, this is the entire wing. So each one of those are different groups. See troop carrier groups. I highlighted in blue there, the 314th group there. And you can kind of see we're tasked to fly 2 serials, the 82nd Airborne, one with 36 aircraft and one with 24. So we flew 60 aircraft out of RAF Saltby and these are our drop times. You can see 0208, 2:14 a.m. Those are our drop times in France, actually. So that just gives you the big picture about such an operation. And you notice the name Brigadier General Gavin, headquarters he was commander of the Task Force Alpha, the 82nd Airborne, which was the assault force portion. And he jumped from a 314th airplane into Normandy. We're going to talk about that later. I'm not going to talk much about this slide. This is an eye chart, but what I want you to take away is on this slide. Each one of those is a tail number. So those are the 60 aircraft that took off from Saltby with their tail numbers. Each one of those carried 18 paratroopers. So think about that. 60 aircraft, 18 paratroopers on every one of those. That's a hell of a strike package. And I just highlighted some of the lead aircraft there in different colors. In red there, that was my aircraft that I led the formation with. Turf and Sport Special in the green there that led our second serial. And the aircraft that General Gavin jumped out of is highlighted in blue there, the lead aircraft, 50th Troop Carrier Squadron in serial 21. And the lead jumpmaster in my aircraft was Lieutenant Colonel Thomas B. Shanley, who was commander of a battalion in the 508th. He was the lead jumpmaster on my aircraft. And due to his efforts, he was outgunned, undermanned on a hill a couple days later. His tenacious defense on Hill 30, actually, just west of St. Mary-Glace, France, was one of the reasons for the success of the Allied airborne mission there, especially the 82nd. Talked about the 508th Paratroop Infantry Regiment. These pictures were taken at RAF Saltby while the men were kitting up there. Those pictures were taken on June 5th. And what's interesting is when the 82nd Airborne was on the field here, where we are sitting right now was where one of the large hangars was on the field. And the airborne troops were actually sequestered off in this part of the field. So these lads were very close, sitting, just camped out here for a few days in a secret place where no one could leave, no one can come in, right where we're sitting right now almost today. And what's neat is this 314th Troop Carrier Group in the 82nd Airborne, we trained together since we left. We trained together in the States, deployed together. We formed a working team. We saw the young 18-year-old kids of the 82nd Airborne grow up to be one of the premier combat units in World War II. So the 82nd Airborne, quite a fighting team, quite a heraldry themselves. So we were marred to the hip with them the entire war. I talked about Brigadier General James Gavin, who ended up commanding the 82nd Airborne in the war. This is his 50th crew that dropped him. A couple pictures there, General Gavin there. It was actually there was confusion, and it was almost like a mystery which aircraft General Gavin jumped out of, because his movements were kept so secret prior to D-Day, because German agents were tracking where the generals were and where the key unit commanders were. They kept his movements totally secret that I didn't even know he was on the airfield. So I didn't know, and people assumed he jumped out of my aircraft because they assumed the general. They knew he went on the lead aircraft. He was not on my aircraft. He was actually in a different serial. And Lieutenant Colonel Glenn A. Meyer, who is the 314th Troop Carrier Group, our executive officer, my number 2 in command, actually flew the aircraft that dropped General Gavin. And that wasn't discovered, folks, until 1990. 50 years after the war, when an enlisted man, a radio operator in the 50th Troop Carrier Squadron, Tech Sergeant Robert Callahan, actually dug out and found the jump manifests. So that was when that mystery was solved. Let's see if I can get this. This is it's a large slide, but here I just want to orient you. Here's London. Okay, here's Paris. So RAF Saltby, we're up here. So you see all this cluster of bases here. This is why this area is so fantastic that you have here, because these were all troop carrier bases of the 52nd Troop Carrier Wing. What the slide doesn't show is the 1st Airborne Division, the 1st Independent Polish Airborne Brigade, and the U.S. 82nd Airborne Division were all stationed up here, right in this cluster, all these fields and this great farmland. So this is where you can kind of see that this is a route that everybody flew to get to France. The drops, here's your invasion beaches. This is how the landing craft came across and landed here. You see your beaches here. Well, the Paras dropped, obviously, prior to their landings. This is the route they flew. They came in from the west, actually, dropped here, and then made a 180-degree turn and returned. So, but think about this. I mentioned we launched 60 aircraft from Saltby, 821 C-47s. So these clusters of bases, these were 2 other American troop carrier wings. Just like this was a wing, had 5 groups in it. The 314th being one group of 5 in this wing. These were 2 other entire American troop carrier wings. And then you had 2 other RAF groups also flying Dakotas, which was a C-47, but they named it differently than we did, out of this area too, which tow gliders and just a mass. So just trying the complexity of the plan, just imagine. And they're saying that if you were standing on the coast of France, okay, And these aircraft were coming over today, 821 aircraft. Based on the spacing and all, you'd have to be standing still for 5 hours for those aircraft to pass. Think about that. That time. That's how to march to do this is just to coordinate it. It took hours to put this together. I mean, the planning was just amazing. These are the objective areas, the drop zones. You can see the. See if I get that line again. This is drop zone November. This is where the 314th we were tasked to drop at. Notice we had to drop at the smallest of all the desettes. You can see these are drop zones here and glider landings. LZ is a landing zone for gliders. So you have two large landing zones. Those were gliders landed. DZ's drop zones where the paras dropped. Some of them were dual DZ LZs. But we were west of here's St. Mary Glace. This was our drop zone right there. The formation was marshaled out of England perfectly. The timing, the weather was perfect all the way until we crossed the channel. When the formations coasted in is where things went. No plane survives first contact with the weather or the enemy. And unfortunately, it was the weather that got us. There was a low cloud deck, and that's why the drops were dispersed. Remember, flying back then was what we call VFR, visual flight rules. Okay, so to navigate, you had to see the ground where you're navigating off the ground. We had some basic radio navigation, but at this point, for a large paratroop drop, it just really wasn't feasible yet. So the airplanes had to see each other in the air to fly formation, and they had to see the ground to be able to navigate to a successful drop zone. So when you fly into a cloud deck, guess what? You can't see your wingman, depending on, and it just gets difficult. So the cloud deck kind of broke up the formation. So I was the lead serial 20. The cloud deck was about 800 feet to 1,200 feet. Our drop altitude was 700 feet for the drop. Okay, so just what I did is I was a crop duster in 1931 prior to the war, and I actually dived under the deck. Is what we did. I was a lead formation aircraft. I decided I'm just going to go under because if I go into this, the formation is going to break apart. I had to gamble. I either go above it, and then we're going to be too high and not be able to descend down. Because think of when we coasted in, we were 3 minutes from the drop zone. So that's when the formation got busted up. So I dove under it. About half of the lead squadron, 62nd, stayed with me. Unfortunately, the back half couldn't make it. They went into the cloud deck, and that's what dispersed the airdrops on D-Day. People want to know it wasn't the talent of the crew members. They were very skilled. They were skilled in formation flying. They had experience in combat. It wasn't the gunfire, because as soon as we came below the cloud deck, there's heavy ground fire, which took a lot of toll on the aircraft in Paris. So this is a painting that was chartered by the Air Mobility Command Museum, and this is actually a Turf and Sport Special there, the lead aircraft. So this is the serial lead behind us. This is just to kind of give you a visual image of what it looked like during the drop. Personally, in my opinion, the formation probably wasn't this tight in the back. That's the Lieutenant Colonel Shanley, who jumped out of my aircraft in the book Drop Zone Normandy. He actually wrote that he dropped right in the center of the DZ. So we hit it square one perfect at 0208, right on target. Unfortunately, the rest of the formation, only half of it made the drop zone. Most of the paras in the 508th of our 60 aircraft were dropped within a 2-mile radius. General Gavin landed 2 miles north of the DZ. Most of the paras actually dropped long due to late acquisition of the DZ, because remember, they're flying through the cloud deck, and once they broke free from that, they were getting ACAC fire and getting shot up pretty bad. So just kind of gives you a visual picture there. Let me catch up here with my notes, because this is actually important for me to read correctly. This is Captain Charles S. Cartwright's crew. He was actually 7 aircraft behind me in the 62nd. But let me just tell you about what happened to his aircraft when we hit the gunfire there. Here we go. I'm going to read actually a little bit, because I need to get this right here. Back inside the cockpit of Captain Charles S. Cartwright's aircraft, which flew the number 7 position, all hell was breaking loose. Captain Cartwright was on drop airspeed at 700 feet altitude behind me when he called the green light. It turned out it was DZ, but his stick did not jump. The jump master, Captain Sivens, told the crew chief in the back there and that he thought the aircraft was too low. He didn't want to jump, so he held his men back. Unfortunately, so word got relayed back up to the pilots through the radio operator. The intercom cord was shot out, so they had to pass that message up. Captain Cartwright said, okay, he started making a right-hand turn. He climbed to 800 feet. But by this time, he's low and slow, making a right-hand turn. Guess what? All fire was directed on his aircraft. He's like a magnet now for gunfire because he's making a re-attack, what we call a re-attack, an oval. He's turned around 180. He's going to come back and drop over the DZ. Right as they were coming over the DZ to make the drop the second time, the aircraft was hit by explosive flak, probably 40 millimeter, Mike. 2 rounds which went right through the plane. One barely missed the crew chief, who was Staff Sergeant Ferris. He was standing in the parachute door there. And paratrooper number 17 in the stick was hit by fragments of this round. The paratrooper was carrying grenades on his waist belt, which ignited the hand grenades, which seriously injured him. So you can see these two hand grenades went off on paratrooper number 17 inside the plane, seriously injuring him. Obviously, this caused the stick not to drop a second time as they were over the DZ. The plane was just getting hit so bad. By this time, once they crossed the DZ, there's really nothing Captain Cartwright could do. You know, he was just yelling. He actually said, "Get the hell out." The plane was taking so much fire. Upon hearing this, that the crew informed the paratroopers, the plane's going to go down, get the hell out. The paratroopers jumped out. At that time, both engines quit on the aircraft and started burning. Captain Cartwright, his immediate first decision was the paratroopers were out, except for number 17, that trooper who was seriously injured. He obviously didn't go. The rest of the stick got out. Captain Cartwright decided, well, I'm going to try to head for the water. Maybe I can ditch this thing. So he made a right-hand turn to try to get off the beaches there, but he realized he wasn't going to make it, so he just made another right-hand turn, and all he could do, make a belly-up landing, 2 engines on fire. He picked a field. He crossed a hedgerow, and he was able to actually make a belly-up landing. The aircraft skidded to a stop in the middle of the field. Of course, the crew they all survived the initial crash. They immediately got out of the aircraft, carried that wounded paratrooper out of the aircraft, put him on the ground. Captain Cartwright went back into the aircraft to find a first aid kit, which he did. He got that, drugged the paratrooper away from the aircraft. As soon as he did that, the aircraft exploded. It was 2:45 a.m. in the morning when this happened. So what this crew did here, with the wounded paratrooper, they drugged him to a ditch, gave him some morphine, covered him with brush and scrub, and then they hid too. But they were able to hide for 4 days, and they hooked up with the 4th Infantry Division, and Captain Cartwright made it back to RAF Saltby on 10 June. He later received the Distinguished Flying Cross. Back behind him in the 2nd serial, First Lieutenant Sidney Dunigan was also on his aircraft. 2 jumpers got fouled up going out the door. It means their lines got tangled, so they had to stop the stick from jumping. They also had to do a race crack, make a re-attack, and guess what? When you spend that much time low and slow over enemy territory, all fire. Sidney Dunigan was in the left seat. He took a small arms fire to the chest, or it might have been machine gun. He had heavy internal bleeding. He died in the seat about a minute later. The co-pilot took over the aircraft, flew it safely back to Saltby. And that was the end of the first mission. 1 aircraft did not make it back, so 59 of the 60 aircraft made it back to England. They all didn't get back to Saltby. Some of them had other damage and landed. But most people don't realize this. The next night was a resupply mission, Neptune number 2. We actually threw a resupply drop with supplies for the pairs that we dropped the night before. So this is the night of June 7th, that we took off. This is a mission called Neptune Freeport. Unfortunately, that mission was much more deadlier. 3 aircraft from our group were shot down, nearly 2 complete crews, and by a miracle, the pilot, these are the crews listed. You notice the second crew, co-pilot, nav, there's not a pilot. By some miracle, the pilot, Captain Sass from the 50th Troop Carrier Squadron, that airplane was shot down, crash landed. The entire crew was killed except somehow the pilot was rescued, probably by Paras. He doesn't remember anything about the crash. He was drug out of the plane. Uh, he was written off as killed as action with the entire crew. On June 21st, Lieutenant Colonel McClure, the squadron commander in the 50th Troop Carrier Squadron, got a message that Captain Sass was alive, so he had literally returned from the dead. June 21st. So these nearly two complete crews were shot down. And but now I'm going to tell you another amazing story about that third crew that was. Let me tell you this story right here. Look at that aircraft on the left. Okay, this is Captain Vince Sciato's aircraft. Okay, what actually happened is, and they were with the 32nd Troop Carrier Squadron. The aircraft flying on his right wing was flown by Captain Bennett. Captain Bennett's aircraft was that third aircraft that got shot down. They actually took heavy fire. If you can imagine this is Captain Sciato, that aircraft with Captain Bennett is on his right wing, slightly behind him. Captain Bennett's aircraft gets hit by large 40 Mike 88. Actually lifted the right wing. His aircraft almost did a complete aileron roll. His right wing is what came down on Captain Sciato's right wing. See how he bent it down at 90 degrees? This aircraft did a complete aileron roll in the air, about 1,000 feet altitude. Think about that. Somehow he leveled it out and crash landed, and they lived. It was an act of God. That crew lived. Shot down. They're captured. They were held in POW camp for 11 months. Captain Bennett and his crew. Meanwhile, Captain Sciato was actually the co-pilot on this aircraft. The pilot in the left seat was actually worked in Group S3. He was the first lieutenant, and he was severely wounded. He got hit in the chest too. They had to pull him out of the seat, and the crew chief actually got in the left seat, and Captain Sciato flew that aircraft back across the channel. You can see with that wing 90 degrees bent down. He landed, made an emergency landing at RAF Warmwell, which is right on the coast. Okay, just barely on one engine, flying that aircraft. So I told you the C-47 was rugged. He was literally flying that aircraft on a wing and a prayer. Literally. But so this is, if you look on the right there, remember I talked about Captain Cartwright, that previous crew who was crash landed. That's Captain Cartwright, the third from the left, getting his Distinguished Flying Cross from General Williams. And this is Captain Sciato on the far right, who landed that aircraft with the wing down. So he's about to they're in line to get their Distinguished Flying Crosses, which were well deserved that day. So there's a couple of heroes. I just wanted to take you inside what it was like to fly D-Day out of RAF Saltby. Just got a couple other slides that I think you'll find interesting. The 314th was actually stationed here at RAF Saltby for 1 year. We got here in February, first few days of March 44, and stayed till February 45. The picture on the left there, that is the Red Cross Aero Building. That's where we held dances. We actually had our own orchestra. Every group, the 314th had its own band, and we had nightly dances. Well, not nightly, but say almost weekly for the officers and enlisted men. And the ladies from the surrounding towns and villages would come. The Red Cross Army nurses were. The females in the military would come. I mean, dancing back then, that was the social event to do. That's how many people met. This is on the right here. That's a picture of the 50th Troop Carrier Squadron. They were the baseball champs at Saltby. So that was a picture of the champions there. The 314th, while I was here, I'm not going to talk extensively, but flew some more combat missions out of Saltby, Operation Market Garden. Flew 4 combat missions. 3 of them to Arnhem, 2 carrying British Paras, and I'll talk about John Frost in a second here, and 1 carrying the Polish independent Paras, and the 4th was actually an airland mission, and received another. That's General Brereton pinning that sewing tying a distinguished unit insignia on our flag there for D-Day. This is after D-Day. The picture on the left there, that's a very rare picture. Those are British Paras loading up to go to market. Very rare picture. John Frost and General Sosabowski, the commander of the Polish Airborne, they left Saltby. They departed from RAF Saltby. So you've got so much history here from your base. Yeah, that's a picture of up top there. That's a 50th Troop Carrier Squadron aircraft on their way to Arnhem with British Paras also. I want to show you that picture. Okay, remember Bing Wood's diary entry? Girls, right? There were in our year here. There were 37 weddings. American GIs meeting local gals. Yeah, imagine that. International relations, right? 37 weddings. The gentleman on the right there, that's Lieutenant Bell. He was the adjutant in the 32nd Troop Carrier Squadron. His wedding was a social event of November 1944, and he married a local girl. I believe she was from Melton Mowbray. I actually have her name here, but I'll just keep moving here. Uh, that was Major Kennedy there on the left there. He was the chief glider pilot. He married a gal too. But 37 weddings. Those are actual photos from some weddings that took place here. Okay, I'm going to leave character now. Talk as Mark Vlahos. So, in 2010, the headquarters, the 314th Headquarters Wing at Little Rock Air Force Base was named after Colonel Clayton Stiles, and you can imagine why. And this is Colonel Stiles' son. This is Howard J. Stiles on the right there, this gentleman in the suit here. Howard is 88 years old today, by the way. His health is not good. So we are here honoring, I'm doing my talk today in honor of Howard and his father, Clayton Stiles, who was quite a man. So this is the headquarters building is named after Colonel Clayton Stiles. Howard J. Stiles was a colonel, retired Army colonel himself. He flew choppers in Vietnam, West Point class in 1959. So he followed in his father's footsteps. That's Wing Commander C.K. Hyde. You guys might know him. Greg Odie's also in the picture on the left. He was the commander of the 19th Wing then. So the two wing commanders there on the ribbon cutting for that headquarters building. Kind of a neat day. Clayton Stiles died young. He was only 68 when he passed. I believe it was 1976. His beloved wife, Esther, outlived him by 26 years. So she died in August 2001. They're both buried in Long Island, New York. Clayton Stiles was a general in the reserve. He made two-star generals in the reserve. So he retired as a two-star general in the Air Force, U.S. Air Force Reserve. So he actually was recalled to duty for the Korean War and saw duty there. But when he retired from United Airlines, he was the most senior pilot for United Airlines flying out of New York City. So think about that. That'll tell you something. Why it matters. This picture here is cool. And by the way, let me go back. I meant to hit the pointer. That's Jack Downhill. Remember I said, remember his name? That's Jack Downhill. I know, Ray, there's Ben Setleff. And Bill Hayden on the right there. I know Ray knows these folks, Tex and Chet Walker. So in 1994, a large group of 314th Troop Carrier Group veterans visited Normandy. Most of them were from the 62nd. They purchased a wine bottle on the beaches there, and they brought this back, and they didn't drink it, they didn't pop it. They said, we're going to crack this bottle when the last 5 of us are alive and are able to make it back here for a squadron reunion. So roll the tape ahead to 2008. I was actually the vice wing commander at Little Rock Air Force Base in the 314th. When it was the Christmas party, the yacht club reunion, we all suddenly realized the importance of the moment. There were only 5 guys left. So this is a picture of that night. Quite a night. So these guys all flew out of Salt Bay on D-Day. And of course, when they cracked the bottle of wine, it had been sitting there. It had spoiled. It tastes terrible. The squadron commander asked him, what does the wine taste like? And Ben Setleff said, this is the sweetest wine I've ever tasted. Quite fitting. But I believe that's all I got today. This is just some of the sources of my research, but mainly the Stiles family provided me with a lot of information. Most of my stories today, I actually published a book in 2019 about this group that flew out of Salt Bay. It's available worldwide, and I'm sure if anybody's interested in learning more. But if you notice, there's that, there's that badge, Men Will Come. Of course, that had to be the name of the book. It had to be. Fulfilling prophecy, right? So we're mission complete here. That's all I got. I don't know if I have time for questions and how long I want, but I know we got to keep moving here. Thank you.